How to write a text-dependent analysis for an informational text. This lesson will use a text entitled Living Off the Earth to model how to write a text-dependent analysis for an informational or expository text. Today's prompt. Authors organize text so that the reader can more easily identify the central idea. Write an essay analyzing how the text structure of Living Off the Earth supports the development of the central idea. Use evidence from the text. The assignment has two component elements, text structure and the central idea of the text. But the prompt doesn't identify the central idea, so that's something the student will have to discover. The student's essay must identify the central idea and describe the text structure. The essay must also discuss the interrelationships between the two text components and then draw conclusions based on these ideas. It looks like this. The assignment begins with a close reading of the text. We'll read the text 3 times, each with a different purpose. Defining the purpose for the read will determine what you see when you read, what you pay attention to. It will also determine what kind of notes you'll take in your journal. The purpose for this first read is to get an overall understanding of the text. What's the gist? What's the topic? And what does the text say about the topic? Before reading, glance at the bolded words. The author thinks these words are important to support the understanding of the text. Look for subheadings. They usually organize the text and identify supporting big ideas. Examine any graphic elements, charts, photographs, maps. As you read, stop at the end of each paragraph. Summarize the paragraph with a word or phrase. Make a chart in your notebook and gather the words and phrases to summarize the text. It could look like this. Now you'll read the text a second time. The purpose for this read is to clarify the organizational structure used by the author. How are the ideas organized in relation to the central idea? How are the supporting ideas introduced? What's the purpose of the subheadings? What's the tone? The student must step back and take a metacognitive approach while reading. Remember, text structure is one of the elements you'll feature in your essay. In your notebook, focus on how the structure is used to organize the ideas in the essay. Use a graphic organizer. Write down any other observations about how the author presents the information. Now you'll read the text for a third time. The purpose of this read is to determine why the author wrote this text. You've identified a central idea. Why did the author choose this idea? Why did the author choose this organizational strategy to develop the idea? Why did the author choose this tone? What conclusions can be based on the ideas you identified after the second and third reads? Your notebook could look like this. Begin by reviewing examples of student notebooks from the previous session. Now reread the prompt. Write an essay analyzing how the text structure of Living Off the Earth supports the development of its central idea. How are the central idea and the text structure interrelated? And what conclusions can be drawn from your observations? One way of writing an essay is to see it as a series of 3 beats, increasing in intellectual rhythm. The first beat presents a summary of what the author said in the text. The second beat explains how the author organized the text to present the author's ideas. We talk about it as writer's craft. The third beat will present conclusions, explaining why the author made the choices you noted during reads 2 and 3. This intellectual progression is satisfying to your reader. The first intellectual beat is an abbreviated retelling of the important information from the text, highlighting the elements you'll discuss. This comes from the notes of your first read. It's what the author says. Copy your notes directly onto a blank page. Using your own story sense, fill out a paragraph summarizing the information from the text. Here's an example of what you could have written. The next intellectual beat of the essay examines how the author writes. The essay writer steps outside of the story and comments on how the author uses the conventions of writing informational texts. Take this information from your second read notes. Here is where you'll talk about how the organization of ideas support the central idea. Here's an example of what you could have written. The last intellectual beat of the essay examines why the author made the choices you've identified in your second and third reads. What conclusions can you make about the subject, purpose, and tone of the text? Why is this message, "It is possible to live and depend solely on what nature offers," appropriate for middle school students? By saving these ideas for the third beat, the essay writer creates an intellectual rhythm of building complexity. Here's an example of what you could have written. The closing of the essay should encourage the reader to continue thinking about the essay after they put it down. One technique is to associate the central idea of the essay with a new idea. Here's an example of what you could have written. The word revise means to look at again. Reread your essay multiple times, each with a different purpose. The purpose for the first read. Is your essay focused? Does it clarify the interrelationship? Does the essay draw conclusions? A second read. Does the essay address how the text is written? Does the essay take a metacognitive approach and examine the writer's craft? For the final read, are standard writing conventions followed? Are words spelled correctly? Good job!